The stopwatch has started on the Minnesota Wild. 10-minute season preview. Now, okay, this is one of the wildest off seasons we've seen in a long time.
Okay.
The Minnesota Wild were at the front of it. They buy out two major players that Steve argues caused the previous lockout in Ryan Suter and Zach Parise.
Argues.
And then have to go and sign Kevin Fiala and obviously Kirill Kaprizov. Now, this is one of the most do or die situations we've ever seen. Like they called the Leafs documentary All or Nothing. This season is Minnesota Wild all or nothing, because the buyouts of Parise and Suter will save the Wild some money this season, but it's going to cost them $12 million off of the cap the following two.
Man,
you have Fiala, you have Kaprizov, you have Zuccarello, strong offense, but is this team enough? Is this team going to be enough for a go-for-it year?
That's the interesting thing here, because heading into last year's playoffs, everyone was focused on how good of a team they were, how exciting. They finished top 10 in scoring. I'd like to know how many times in the Wild's history they've done that. But there's something to be said about it being your first time there as a group. And it just felt like this iteration of the Minnesota Wild, the Kirill Kaprizov Minnesota Wild, needed to earn their stripes. And they did, going down. But now all of a sudden they're right into go for it mode.
It's a lot of pressure.
Pretty tough. And like Cam Talbot has a bounce back season and it's go for it. Kakkonen is still, earning his stripes in the NHL, and now it's go for it. You lose well, I'm not going to categorize losing Ryan Suter as good or bad. Zach Parise might be good, actually, just in terms of cap and everything. But now there's a big hole in their leadership group. It's everything is different about the Minnesota Wild this year in terms of their mindset and their style. They're a fascinating team.
They were one of the most kind of steady teams in terms of roster construction for a long, long time. Sorry, and
boring. I think.
Boring. Yeah. By the way, Kevin Fiala has not re-signed yet. I meant to say that he needs to be re-signed after this season.
That's
His
what
deal
I thought
is up.
you meant.
But I want to look at this. Okay, so we've got Kaprizov, Zuccarello, Eriksson Ek, Fiala, Rask, Foligno, Marcus, and then on defense, Spurgeon, Brodin, Dumba, Goligoski. You have to think that 2 or 3 of those names are gone next year to accommodate the cap hit that the Wild are going to take. And that's not even giving someone like, say Kaapo Kähkönen has a great season and he's due up for what Nedeljkovic got, $3 million. That's going to be tough for the Minnesota Wild. So when we say go for it, it has to be a go for it year. You just said it's really hard for it to be a go for it year, but it kind of has to be a go for it year.
It's a go for it year if you have the horses to go for it. And so I look at Minnesota and I say, okay, last year there was a couple guys, Kevin Fiala and Joel Eriksson Ek in particular, who performed above expectations. And then you bring in Kaprizov, who had never done this ever in any league before, and then he destroys the NHL.
He gets paid like crazy for like 50 games.
Right.
Man,
in the
but
pandemic
he is
season.
that good.
So I look and I say, okay,
I hope so.
Did Minnesota catch lightning in a bottle, or is that their actual level of talent?
I think it's their level of talent. It's even though it's a shortened season, it's long enough that you can see what's there. And they got some answers. They're good in all the right spots. Their top 4 is good. Their top 6 is good. Their goaltending's good. That's not a fluke. But holy cow, it's a crazy risk. I still see them. This name's going to be brought up a few times in these videos, but I still see them as a Jack Eichel suitor. I'm just
where does the money work?
Well, let me talk to you about that. Do you need to know? Do you want to make the money work?
Okay.
Okay, because the cap space right now is $3 million. By the deadline, if everything stays the same, it'll be 15. And who should be healthy by then? Should the surgery happen?
Well, this is the whole holdup. The Buffalo Sabres are I'm sure we'll get to that, but it's wrong what they're doing. But it holds up any trade.
Right. The Buffalo Sabres are losing to themselves right now.
Yes.
But okay, so like let's say you're Bill Guerin, okay, and you have the opportunity to get Jack Eichel at the trade deadline. I mean, I'm looking at they have all their draft picks except a 7th round pick for this coming year, and to replace that, they've got the San Jose 5th round pick.
Oh, hooray!
Would you not just blow out your entire lineup of picks this year at the trade deadline, whether for Jack Eichel or for other? $15 million if things stay the same. You got a lot of money to spend. You can bring on a lot of talent.
Well, and I like acquiring Jack Eichel because you can prove he can still hang. You can prove that he hasn't been affected by all this. He's still a great player. And then when you need the cap space again, you just trade him. Like maybe you acquire him knowing.
But they're also humans, and then you run into what's happening with Vegas, where guys don't like the team and don't want to go there because they're being shipped out.
True, but this is a truly unique situation.
Yeah, you may have to set that expectation, Jesse, to avoid what happened in Vegas. Vegas also they're the rumor is that the management's just straight up not telling the truth. Like they're like flat out lying to the players. That's within the complaint.
With Eichel, hey, listen, you're only going to be here a year. Also, we'll let you get the surgery that you want. There's so many different factors here. It's funny that we're doing a Minnesota Wild preview and we're spending like 2-3 minutes on Jack Eichel. But that was what I thought the plan was months ago, and I have a hard time believing something that significant is no longer the plan.
So can it be a go for it year when Cam Talbot and Capo Kakinen are your goalies?
They're great. They're great, and Kakinen's only going to get better.
Mm-hmm. Is Edmonton mad that Cam Talbot's good again?
Hopefully at themselves. At themselves, dude. That guy, he threw up a .917 save percentage in 72 games because they couldn't get a backup for him, and then he looked tired, and they're like, "Oh, he stinks." Like of course a goalie like that would work in Minnesota. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Their offense was better than their defense last year, but at their core, they are still the Minnesota Wild.
Okay,
they're going to be hard to score against.
They are, and they are going to score a lot more than what we're used to. Now, do you think that when you look at this roster, it's going to be able to compete with pretty much everybody with the exception of the Avs? Can they compete with the Avs? Because the Avs are sort of in a league of their own in the Western Conference, right up there with the Golden Knights. Is this the third team in the Western Conference?
The third team, I look at them, in the Western Conference.
Yeah,
I thought you meant in the division. I'm
no.
I think they're higher than that. No, it's clearly at the top of the Central that we think is relatively open. It's clearly them and the Avs. And if I'm not mistaken, they had the Avs number during the regular season. They definitely have what it takes. It's going to be a derby every time those two get together, as long as the Wild does their job the rest of the time and has a pretty convincing winning record against everyone else.
I can't remember a time, guys, where, and no offense to Wild fans, but where people looked forward to a Minnesota Wild game on a Tuesday night just because the Wild were playing. There's
a lot going on with this team this year.
This is exciting.
Yeah. It takes one guy, and all of a sudden everyone else looks exciting too.
Yes, yeah, and everybody they play. This is a story every single time they take the ice. Every game will matter for them, and you wonder is the pressure going to bring them together, or is it going to break them?
Well, I laughed, by the way, earlier when you said, they got San Jose's 5th round pick. You know where Kirill Kaprizov was picked? 5th round. You talk about a franchise-altering pick in the 5th round. I think they're going to rise to the pressure. I think athletes like this. I think it's a lot of fun for them.
Okay. So that brings me in our final minute here to your projection. Where do they finish in the division? Gentlemen, Jesse, we'll start with you.
I think the storyline this season around the Minnesota Wilds will be a little different than what's expected. I think Bill Guerin looks towards the cap crunch that's coming in the next 40 years for this team. And he may look to sell off a few pieces to make room for what's coming. Sort
of like the Blues a couple years before they won.
Mm-hmm. So
Interesting.
I'm taking them to get that second wild card spot and finish
wild card
5th in the division.
Whoa!
I think that's an enormous failure if that's what happens to them. To me, they should be an easy second in the division.
I also had them second. Jesse Blake. Damn.
Everything's not going to go to chalk. You can't. I don't think your expectations of a season can be, oh, they're going to line up exactly how we think they are.
And right there is
Yes,
where
they
we hit
can.
the 10-minute mark.